Hello and welcome to another week of Tech Talk. We're all back together this week. Mike, what topic have you been saving for us?
Okay, so a topic this week. Firstly, I just want to say, guys, awesome Tech Talk last week. Certainly took a bit out of it myself. You're missing that certain bit of, panaz, that bit of power, but I wasn't there. But apart from that, it was really, really good. Took a lot from it. Get the work into the floor before you go for the finisher after. I like it. Today, we were going to talk about a question that does come up quite a bit, and that is how soon can we get onto a slab? And we're not talking about the beers after work. So whether that be getting onto, first thing you think of is when can I get in and start grinding, but also that it has come up in the scenario of when can we get on and start sealing. So if after the pour you are doing a seal and that sort of thing of a driveway or something like that. So we thought that was a good one to bring up. Jade, what are your thoughts in and around this topic, mate?
Oh, look, I mean, generally, I don't know if there's a hard and fast rule, but I mean, I would personally, have a bit of a lead time before I put a sealer or anything as such. Epoxies even. But what are your thoughts, guys, with, I guess, in the polishing process? How long would you generally wait before you begin a project? I guess it might relate to the guys in the polishing game when they would do their first cut. When's a suitable time to attack the floor?
Look, I'll weigh in on the grinding side of it, the structural side, and I'm going to leave Tim and Brandon to talk about the chemical side of it because that's my strength, I guess. I'll talk about the grinding side because I get asked quite often, how soon after this is poured can we start grinding? And to me, it's always, well, there's a few factors that you need to consider here. Where do your liabilities lie as a contractor? Right? Which ones do you want to assume that you don't currently have to worry about, but as soon as you cross a particular line, now you assume a liability. And what I'm referring to there is if you're grinding concrete inside of 28 days, which is the recommended time that you need to wait for concrete to cure, there are so many different levels around that, even that statement, but I'm not going to get into that. Say you jump onto a slab inside of 28 days, there is someone who is responsible for the warranty of that slab that you're grinding. Say, for instance, if it's the engineer or the builder of the project, they are going to be responsible for what happens to that slab. Now, you jump onto a concrete slab that's a slab on ground and it's 4 inches deep. You start grinding that inside of 3 days, you are actually going to start potentially causing some issues with the structural integrity of the concrete because of what you're doing to the curing, the way that you've interrupted the curing process. All right, I'm just very, very broad terms jumping on 30 grit, having at it, cutting, happy days. You actually will have an effect on the structural integrity and the curing process of that concrete. Now, this is not the way it was designed to cure out. Now you assume the responsibility of that slab. When people ask me how soon can I get onto it, you really need to consult the builder and you really need to consult the engineer if there is one involved in the project to get them to sign off on when you can jump on it. So personally, I would prefer to wait at least 14 days on grey concrete, 7 days to 10 days on white concrete. It actually cures a whole lot faster than grey. But again, it really comes down, it's all situational. The right people need to be signing off on it. The safest is going to be 28 days on regular concrete. You've done that, everyone's covered from a liability perspective, but I understand everyone wants their job finished tomorrow. It's interesting to me how a structure that's going to be there for 100 years, 14 days is going to make the biggest difference to the whole project right now. That's beyond me, why that's so important to get them done that fast. The thicker the concrete, the longer it takes to cure, so you need to bear that in mind. You've also got the other side of it, which I'm hoping Tim and Brandon will talk more about. Once you've ground that concrete, you then, if you're going to straight away start polishing that concrete, you've got the other added bonus of you need some calcium hydroxide available in that concrete to react with your densifier in order to create a strong surface to polish. And I'm just going to leave that one there, and Tim and Brandon can unpack that.
No, you're not going to leave it there. Why is white cure faster than grey, Josh?
Because it's much more expensive.
Fair enough.
I was actually going to say, I don't actually know the reason why white cures faster than grey. I just know that it does, has a significantly faster kick, particularly in the initial first 4 days.
I was just going to ask you a question, Josh, relating to last week's Tech Talk, actually, because you're talking about grinding. What about a surface polishing application? What are your considerations from a time frame when it comes to surface polishing?
Well, Tim, that's really something I was going to get you to cover. the surface polishing is a whole lot more of a chemistry game than the exposed aggregate is. And it is because the whole surface is going to require a chemical reaction to build that floor. Exposed aggregate, you've got maybe 30 to 40% of the surface area is a chemistry game that we're looking for a chemical reaction in order to build that surface. The rest is taken up by a dense and uniform aggregate. So when it comes to doing a surface polish, a couple of things, it's all the way at the top. That's where all of the moisture is going during the curing process. And then you've got all surface area that you need to get good chemical reaction with to build an integral surface in order to polish it. So, and leave that stuff as long as you can before getting onto it. 28 days is actually, in my opinion, on a surface polish at 4 inches. 28 days is actually still even touch and go. That'll be heavily dependent on the environment that it's curing in.
Can't we just keep this simple, guys? Like, if I want to get on the slab, can't I just make it harder? Just densify it, and that's in the name. It's dense. Like, isn't that just going to work to cure my slab faster? Like, talking about chemicals, can't I just flood the absolute believers out of it and just leave it at that, and then it's going to harden up and I can just get straight to it? Like, isn't that just how it works?
Add it to the mix when it's coming out of the truck, man.
Yeah, why not? Densify. That's how it works, shouldn't it, Tim?
Put it down before Rio.
So it's a really interesting conversation, because there's actually some things that go both ways in this discussion, depending on which element you're talking about. But I really agree with Josh when he talks about you're accepting liability for something. I mean, the reality is when you actually start treating concrete with some of our products, in many cases they'll actually help with the curing process, right? But like Josh says, you've basically taken it on. You're not doing that from the beginning. You're not starting you're not putting curing agents down or products that are going to assist with the curing necessarily straight away, particularly if you're doing an exposed aggregate or a deep grind. You're actually going to be opening up that surface. You're going to be increasing the surface area significantly because of the scratch pattern you're putting in. So you're giving the moisture much higher surface area to actually evacuate or escape from the slab, which is not doing the concrete a favour at all. So that's what's happening initially, and that's where the problem, I think, a lot of what Josh is alluding to is coming from. I mean, once you start grouting, once you start densifying and you actually start chemically treating the surface, you're actually starting to help the concrete. However, you're actually, accelerating the other process, the evacuation or migration of moisture very early in the piece. When you start grinding early, pretty much every method we look at for trying to cure concrete is all very focused around the very early stages of the setting and the curing on the concrete. So that's the area that we're playing with and meddling with, and that's why there's the sort of risks associated that Josh is talking about. When it comes to getting into the concrete and getting the maximum from a reaction point of view, yeah, I mean, the concrete needs time to do its thing. I mean, Josh mentioned calcium hydroxide before. Now that purely is a byproduct of water reacting with cement. If the concrete hasn't had time to actually complete its reactions, then there's going to be less calcium hydroxide in the actual concrete. So there'll be less free lime or material for your densifiers to actually do their thing with. We talk about this being a really important reaction in our seminars. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with a whole bunch of densifier that's just dehydrated sitting in your concrete, which isn't a bad thing. It's still good for concrete and it's still good for your process, but it doesn't have the structural or the integrity. It's not a reacted material. You don't end up with that calcium silicate, which is what gives you the real hardness for your polishing process. So it needs time. That cement needs time to react to do its thing. And the longer that moisture can be kept in the concrete, the more particles of cement that can actually can react and convert, create some more of this byproduct that we love so much, this calcium hydroxide.
Tim, would you say the cream of the concrete slab is super important for the densification of the slab below?
When you're doing a surface polish?
When you're doing a full exposure?
Yes, but I think a big part of it is when you start putting a scratch pattern into the concrete, it's like if you folded up a piece of paper into a zigzag or a crinkle cut chip, for instance, and you can stretch it out probably to about twice its length. So you're taking an area of the concrete, because you put this corrugation through your diamond, through your scratch, your 30 grit all through the surface, you're actually creating a much bigger surface area for your moisture to escape from. So I think it's more about increasing the surface area that moisture can get out of the concrete than necessarily removing that cream from the top.
So we've talked about densifier and waiting the time or needing to wait the time for it to have a proper reaction. What about if I'm not relying on calcium hydroxide? Let's say I'm going to be using a sealer on this project like Penex, or maybe I'll be using a water-based polyurethane, whatever it might be. Let's say it's a coating. Why can't I get onto that a bit earlier? I don't need lime, just need lime in my Corona beer.
I think it depends a lot on what type of product you're going to be putting down at the end of the day. I mean, you're talking about polyurethane, you're talking about acrylic, you're talking about impregnators. They're all very different families, very different chemistry. Clearly, the more topical it becomes, the more likely and the more ability it has to entrap moisture below it. We see that a lot with polyurethanes and thicker coatings, where if there is too much moisture coming up through the concrete, you end up getting this white blotchiness. You get this moisture being trapped below the coating. Not such a problem, not so much a problem with acrylics, because they tend to allow breathing a bit more. And then, of course, with the impregnators, they don't stop the breathing or the moisture migration of moisture in the concrete at all. So it depends a lot about on the actual product, how much is going down, and really how much moisture is still left in the concrete at this time.
Usually the best way to know, to answer that question, is kind of just to rotate the drum around. Normally the directions are written on the back.
Usually, yes.
Yeah,
Well,
or there's
not very good
a
at
QR code.
And there's tech sheets too, of course, which are available very easily downloadable off our website for all our products anyway.
I guess, wanted to find out the why. I know it says it on the label, but why is that? But yeah, no, you just explained that. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, I guess the overarching consideration of all of this is what are the circumstances? What are the conditions? I mean, you're talking about concretes that there could have been rain on for a week before you want to go and seal them and so forth. How much moisture still is in the saw cuts and things like that? There's different telltales without having to have moisture probes and things like that you can be looking towards to see, is this a good idea or is it not? Like Josh said, I mean, the thing's going to be down there for 100 years, hopefully. Why are we putting so much pressure on doing these final finishing steps in such a condensed time frame? Let's get it right, and let's understand the factors that are really going to impact the quality of the end result.
I guess for the installers that look at a slab and think that it is dry, they just see it as a dry slab, say after 7 days. They might be, kind of a bit of a false kind of pretense there that they can jump on that floor. So I guess for the guys to understand that there are factors that may cause, complications, it's probably a good tech talk to discuss the pitfalls of jumping on it too soon.
Most of all, we get these questions on a Friday, right, Mike? Why are people normally in a rush to get these jobs finished on a Friday, Mike?
Because the builder's ringing them non-stop, saying, is it done yet? Is it done yet? Because the builder wants to hurry up and go for a beer, and he needs to make sure the money's going to come through so he can grab that beer and get on it. But us, but the grinders and polish, mate, they're just off to the next job. That's all they do, mate. They're working too hard.
There's always a different slab in the mix on a Friday, right?
That's right, absolutely. But no, as far as grinding those bottle tops off so you can polish off a beer, I couldn't agree more. Never too green to get on one of those as long as it's carved. Unless you're over in the UK. Hello to all the European viewers. Warm will do. Although I will say, being in the UK, I don't think I ever had a warm beer. All right, guys, thank you for that one. And as always, any comments down below, or pick up the phone and give us a shout if you'd like to discuss this topic a bit more. Always happy to have a chat, but good one, guys.
Have a great weekend and have a great long weekend for those who are getting one.
Yes, absolutely. The Melbourne Cup weekend.
See you guys. Enjoy the weekend.
Enjoy your weekend. See you guys.
Back a winner, everyone.
A meeting warning. That's the life.
That's all the credit we have left.
Let's do it. Let's go.
Let's put more money into this thing.